So, how much difference can 1mm make? Well, in the wristwatch world it can be quite dramatic, especially the ripple effect to all the other proportions of the case and the bracelet, which will make a difference between a watch that melts into your wrist and feels just right, and a watch that looks like a dinner plate strapped to your hand. So, which category does this new 39mm 62MAS homage from Saint Martin falls in? Well, we have it here. Let's find out. Hello and welcome to the show. Is it a show or is it just a video? Well, whatever it is, you are very much welcome. Anyway, truth be told, I never came across a Saint Martin watch that didn't fit more or less well on my about 7-inch wrist, and this watch is not an exception, as we will see later in this video. A quick disclaimer, this watch was kindly sent to me by Saint Martin and I don't have to send it back, so technically this episode is sponsored by them. And yes, that's why I saw a pop-up at the start of this video. And of course, all the links with best discounts will be in the description for you to further explore this quite captivating timepiece. So, this particular model was introduced very recently and it was rolled out as a budget-friendly version, which kind of implies that there are some compromises in the quality, materials or functionality that have been made. Well, I think it is important that we get to the bottom of those. As far as first impressions go, I must confess I'm very much impressed by this timepiece. The moment I unpacked it and took the stickers off, it is a really stunning example of Saint Martin's craftsmanship. Okay, they did have 5 versions of this homage, including a 37mm one prior to this watch, which I think helped to really hone this version's design close to perfection. So let's start with what is really different on this 39mm watch from its current 41mm version, apart from the old-school plastic container for packaging, of course. Well, surprisingly, there is very little difference between the two. There is no difference in terms of the bracelet. Both versions use pins to connect the links. Well, this one uses pin and collar system, which, yes, everyone's least favorite, and yes, you will need some more extra patience to adjust the bracelet and possibly some hand plasters. Now, both use double pusher clasp with no on-the-fly adjustments, so much of a muchness here. Well, actually, it is even more in favor of this new version, and I will discuss it in more detail when we take a closer look at the bracelet. In terms of the watch head, we are not getting drilled lugs on this version, and we're not getting that nice embossed shark on the back of the case. Okay, I really like that one, but that's not the end of the world. And then there are some very minor changes on the dial and the bezel. The minute chaptering is now on the dial rather than at the angle to the rehaut, and it doesn't look like we get that little cap on top of the pinion. And the font and the minute markers on the bezel are ever so slightly altered as well. And actually, come to think of it, the final result looks even closer to the Seiko's own reissue of this watch. Of course, there are two main differences which are much more noticeable: the size and, yes, the price. Version 4 without any discounts is about $235, while this new 39mm version has a considerably more budget-friendly price tag of $175. Although, during the recent sales, the price of this 39mm watch went down as low as $160. So if these two watches are so similar, why there is still a difference in the price? Well, I have my theory, which I'm saving for the verdict section. Let's quickly go over the new dimensions and other specifications, and then to demonstrate what we get with these new proportions on this 39mm version, I will show footage how this watch wears on my about 7-inch wrist as well as on a 6¼ wrist. Measuring across the case, we get 39mm case width. Now, the actual bezel diameter is a smidge larger, 40mm exactly as I measured it on this watch. Case height is 13.2mm and lug-to-lug distance is 47.8mm. However, with the protruding end links, we are more interested in end-link-to-end link measurement, which is 50.5mm. This is still okay for my about 7-inch wrist, and with quite aggressively pointing down end links, it could work on a slimmer wrist too. Lug width is 20mm, so we have a strap darling here. The bracelet has a nicely controlled taper down to 18mm at the clasp, and at the full length the bracelet should cover wrists up to 8¼ inch or 21cm in circumference, and this watch weighs 167 grams and 158 grams after adjusting it to my about 7-inch wrist. Taking a closer look at the case, we have very well applied circular brushing on top of the case and mirror polished flanks. The case is finished very well, the polishing looks very good, and the transitions between the facets are crisp and yet ever so slightly smoothed out to avoid sharp edges. The prominent, well-proportioned screwed-down crown is signed, and it is also well finished. Back of the case has a bit more coarse circular brushing and a sterile screw-on back case. Now, this case is as much about the finishing as it is about the shape. The curvature of the lugs is kind of just right. 13mm height is not the slimmest, and yet the case sits quite low on the wrist. This is probably one of the most comfortable 39mm divers I came across. So I really like this case, and yes, we do have, of course, declared 200 meters of water resistance. In regards to movement, San Martin didn't do any changes, which is good, so we still have proven and reliable Seiko NH35 in the back of this diver, beating at 21,600 vibrations per hour and with 41 hours of power reserve. This is probably the most appropriate Seiko movement to power this Seiko homage. We have 120 clicks unidirectional bezel here with ceramic insert and well-loomed 12 o'clock marker. The bezel markings are engraved, the coin edge grip is very well finished, the resistance is good, and the bezel action is outstanding. There is no backplay or side play, and the clicks are nice and tactile. And here is how it sounds. We have a very clear, ever so slightly double dome sapphire crystal. My guess is that this clarity is achieved by a good quality and quantity of anti-reflective coating. I like the subtle curvature of the crystal, I think it adds to the vintage aesthetics of this watch, and based on my experience, having a combination of sapphire crystal and ceramic bezel dramatically reduces the risk of scratches and keeps the watch looking pristine for a long time. One of the big changes on this version is the introduction of enamel dials, blue and green. I went for this sunburst grey one. This is more of a personal choice decision. Whatever colorway you choose, looks like you will get a clean and quality execution. As I noted at the start of this video, the minute chaptering is printed around the perimeter of the dial. We also have applied our markers that are filled to the brim with C3 superluminova, as we will see in a moment. And we have a nicely framed date cutout at 3 o'clock position, somewhat mimicking the hour marker's style. We have applied a logo under the 12 o'clock marker and a printed two-liner above 6 o'clock marker, reminding us that we have an automatic movement here and 200 meters of water resistance. And we have a classic 62MAS style, well-proportioned handset. And yes, the hands have a very generous layer of C3 superluminova applied, just like the hour markers. Here is the lume shot, and as you probably guessed it, the lume is very, very good. And this lume can easily compete with my other lume top performers in my collection. Bracelet. Well, moving on to the bracelet, and we get a very good integration between the solid end links and the case. As a matter of fact, in their promotion video, San Martin specifically pointed out how much more seamless and flush are now the end links with the case, and also underlined more fine and consistent brushing of the bracelet. So in this respect, this 39mm version might even surpass the 41mm version 4. And inspecting this watch in person, so to speak, I can see how well finished this bracelet is. Solid stainless steel links have mirror polished sides and are interconnected by pins. The tolerances on this bracelet are nice and tight, and it feels quality. We also get here one of the recent San Martin's chunky fully milled double pusher clasp with 4 well-spaced marker adjustments. The clasp has very similar brushing to the bracelet with nice high polished chamfers and San Martin's applied logo. This chunky clasp, in my view, completes the full package of this watch. No corners cut, high quality of execution and materials, starting from sapphire crystal and ending with this well-machined clasp. In terms of how it wears, well, I like to wear watches of this style a bit loose, so I can have an option of wearing it above or below the bone, so to speak, and it actually wears very comfortably, no matter which option I choose. And here is this watch on a 6¼ wrist, still quite wearable. If you have a slimmer wrist, there is of course a 37mm version to consider, unless you are comfortable with larger watches, but come to think of it, previous version of Rolex Submariner, the 40mm one, had very similar like-to-like distance of 50.5mm, and the newer version, 41mm, has ever so slightly even larger, so I think this San Martin with 50.5mm should be just fine. So, my verdict. Well, what I see here is, as I just mentioned, a full package. High attention to detail at every part of this amazing timepiece, as we would expect from a premium brand like San Martin, and at the same time at a very budget-friendly price. And remember, at the start of this video I talked about quite a significant difference in price between the 41mm version, priced at $235, and this 39mm one at $175. This kind of raises a question. If this 39mm version is so good and now can fit even wider variety of wrist sizes, isn't San Martin cannibalizing its own 41mm product line? Well, the interesting thing is that during the recent sales, both watches were heavily discounted and both had a price tag of about $160. In other words, we now have a choice of two amazing timepieces for about the same price. We just have to be a bit patient and wait for that next AliExpress sale, which is really never that far away, and then choose the version that suits us. What are your thoughts? Well, do let us know in the comments. And for more amazing value divers and other style watches, check my playlist over here. And for other San Martin watches, I have a link over here. And if you enjoyed this review, do hit that like button, and of course do not forget to subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching, take care, and I will see you in the next video.